साथियों, समय हर देश के युवा को अपने देश का भाग्य बदलने का मौका देता है। एक ऐसा कालखंड जब देश के युवा अपने साहस से, अपने सामर्थ्य से देश का कायाकल्प कर सकते हैं। विभिन्न मंत्रालयों, विभागों और संस्थाओं में सरकारी नौकरी देने का अभियान चल रहा है। बीते 1-1.5 साल में ही लगभग 10 लाख युवाओं को हमारी सरकार ने पक्की सरकारी नौकरी दी है। ये अपने आप में बहुत बड़ा रिकॉर्ड है। पहले की किसी भी सरकार के समय इस तरह मिशन मोड में युवाओं को भारत सरकार में पक्की नौकरी नहीं मिली है।
Hello and welcome to another episode on the Public Global. I am Ajay Prakash. What I just showed you was a clip which I took from a Twitter user. Are young men and women in the IT sector lining up for a few hundred jobs in the UPS office? The total number of people standing outside was more than 3,000. Now, when India is known as the global center for IT services, how come there is suddenly a shortage of jobs all around? And what you were hearing in the background was our Prime Minister Modi, who was trying to boast about what all his government has done for the youth of this country and how they fit in into his scheme of things towards a Viksit Bharat. In today's episode, I am going to touch upon a few aspects of the Modi government, who very diligently and through his own hard work has managed to bring down this great country into a state of depression. The rupee slide against the dollar continues, making our imports more expensive. High prices, high inflation makes life miserable for all of us, especially the poor. FDI in the country, foreign direct investment, has all but vanished. Stock market is down, corporate taxes are too low, and personal income tax rates are high. The salaries of employees have not gone up last year. The job market growth has vanished. And on top of it, we have the threat from Trump hanging on our heads like a sword. So whatever can go wrong for India has gone wrong. And not only gone wrong, our government seems to be clueless on how to handle the situation. And while the finance minister is busy trying to tax popcorns in 3 different ways, the RBI has spent almost $77 billion trying to halt the slide of the rupee, but never succeeded in doing it. It only made our foreign exchange reserves come down to their lowest level in the past 1 year. And the banks are getting starved for cash. They just don't have any more money to lend. And not only that, the personal loan defaults in the country are on the increase. And if arm twisted, the same category of people are swapping their loans for a gold loan. And if you are one of them who thinks that it's only one bad quarter and things will improve next quarter, well, I think that elusive quarter is not going to come for quite some time. And neither the budget is going to fix any of these problems. Around this time last year, the Hindu had done an article comparing the state of economy between the UPA government and the NDA government. Now, this article is available on internet. I have left the link over here for any one of you interested. You can pick it up from there. But in the last 1 year, most of these macroeconomic indicators have shown a negative growth. Let's start looking at some data. Here is data from the Press Information Bureau, and this is what the government will want you to believe. Dated 4th October 2024, it's some data on India's employment growth. A robust journey is what the government calls it. I would like to draw your attention to the orange curve here, which indicates the number of people who have been employed starting from the 80s right up to 2023. I would guess that employment here means that the number of people employed across all sectors and all types of employment, that is salaried, temporary, casual, agriculture workers, industrial workers, all of them included. The rather awkward or funny thing to observe here is that even during the corona period of 2019 to 2021, the number of people employed kept going up. At the same time, the Modi government would want us to believe that during the UPA 1, UPA 2 period, the employment in our country hardly went up. The line you see here is flat. The Modi government was trying to counter the opposition's claim of India having jobless growth, and the data they have taken is from the CLEMS database of the Reserve Bank of India. CLEMS stands for Capital, Labor, Energy, Materials and Services. This data is maintained by the RBI, which provides employment estimates at all India level, including public and private sectors. According to this graph, roughly about 64 crores Indians had some kind of employment in 2023. Now let's do a quick calculation. According to the recent data, approximately 68% of India's population falls within the age range of 15 to 64 years. So we have a population of 143 crores. 68% of that is 97 crores. Now, the student population in India is about 30 crores. So you remove 30 crores out of 97, the remaining is 67 crores. And out of this 67, Modi government claims that 64 crore Indians are employed. I don't know about you, but to me, this data seems pretty amusing. For one, it looks like the entire country is fully employed. Those who want employment have employment. There is hardly any unemployment. And secondly, we are feeding these people unnecessarily. Modi government is giving free rations to 80 crore people who seem to have some kind of employment or the other. On the other side, we have Bank of Baroda. Now, Bank of Baroda does marvelous work and brings out these economic scenario thematic reports. And you can find these reports on the Bank of Baroda website under the tab thematic reports. I'm going to refer to one such report which they brought out on the employment scenario within the country. According to Bank of Baroda, the growth in employment in FY20 was 2.1%. It remained flat the next year. Then the growth suddenly jumped in FY 2022 to 6.7%. But thereafter, our employment growth has been on the decline. In FY23, it came down to 5.5%, and in FY24, down to 1.5%. These figures contradict the government's claim that the employment kept rising during the pandemic period and thereafter, even at a much faster pace. There is no indication that things would have improved in the financial year 25. The report further states that on a cumulative basis, the growth for the 4 year period between FY19 and FY23 was 3.6%, which is still below the potential that goes with an economy which was growing at 6.5 to 7%. For this 4 year period, the GDP growth averaged 3.6%, but a recovery was definitely apparent post COVID and the lockdown. And since the job growth hasn't been there, we have all seen it on the ground, the GDP figures become suspect. For the remaining of today's episode, I'll take you through this very interesting report published by the International Labour Organization Institute for Human Development. Its title is India Employment Report 2024. The link to this report is given at the bottom as usual. Looking at one of the graphs given in this report, which shows the compound growth rate of the population, labor force, workforce, and employment across major sectors as a percentage. We first look at the period between 2000 and 2012, which includes the Atal Bihari Vajpayee period, the UPA 1 of Manmohan Singh, and 3 years into UPA 2. The population growth of 15 years and above people in the country during that period was 2.39%, which will give you a benchmark how the job growth happened. The labor force growth happened at a lesser percentage than the population. It grew at 1.5. Workforce total grew at 1.5. Agriculture workforce came down, but manufacturing growth was 2.8, and the highest growth was in construction, 9%. Services growth during that 12-year period was minus 0.67. Why India had a negative growth in the services, we will look at that in some other episode. But since there are many other components, but during the same period, India's export services remained on a very high growth trajectory. The next 7 years between 2012 and 2019, which was the remaining part of UPA 2 and Modi's government's first term in office, the population grew at 2.07%, labor force grew only at 0.5%, workforce, there was hardly any growth. Agriculture further came down to minus 2.5%, manufacturing came down to minus 0.3, construction growth further came down to 2.1, but services increased to 10.8, the growth in services. And finally, the last term of Modi government, that is NDA 2 from 2019 to 2022. The population growth came down further to 1.5, labor force increased to 4.6, the workforce increased to 5.3, agriculture was given a push to 8.9, manufacturing growth went into positive at 3%, construction went up, but services came down drastically again to just 1%. 2019 to 2022 was the period of India's recovery from the pandemic year, the so called V shaped recovery, which the government keeps boasting about. After the bad innings of NDA 1, that is Modi from 2014 to 2019, where we saw the demonetization, the bad implementation of the GST, and then the pandemic, all put together, India suffered. The Modi government thereafter really tried to bring back India on track. They were successful to a limited extent, but again they started losing out. They have lost out on growth in services. Now, services is the sector where the urban youth get employed. So, what is the services sector in India? Well, the services sector contributes to over 50% of our GDP. And this sector is a major source of employment. It provides jobs to 30% of our population. And the types of jobs it provides is given on the right hand side, right from IT services, BPO, financial services, healthcare, education, training, and so on. So when the growth in the services sector has stopped over the last 3-4 years, it is but natural that lines outside employment agencies are just going to increase. And I think the worst is still to come. Thank you for watching this episode. I'll see you again next week.